How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tear Talk, and today, in partnership with Transformations Treatment Center in Delray, Florida, I'm going to be discussing their first responder program. And today, my guest is Tamara Evans, correct?
Yes.
First off, Tamara, thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
As you know, I'm a first responder myself, so being a first responder is very dear to my heart. So I've been trying to see what we could do for first responders, making sure that we have the programs that are out for them, making sure we can reach them, because obviously our first responders, they don't like to admit that they're vulnerable. So what I want to do is to kind of bring about a show that can connect them with people who may have had that same type of resistance, if you will. So first off, I want to thank you for coming on the show, because this is about being vulnerable, and you're going to admit to some vulnerability today, and I think that's very brave.
Thank you.
So again, I'm just going to shake your hand again, because I'm honored to meet you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Pleasure
now,
to meet you.
you are a veteran, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so can we just get a little bit about who you are, your life, why'd you choose to go into the military?
Yeah, it was a pretty straightforward and simple decision for me. I grew up wanting to be my bigger brother, and my brother joined the Marine Corps. So he's 4 years my senior, and when he joined the Marines, I was like, oh, well, if this is the thing to do, to be tough, like, then that's what I'm doing, because I want to be tough like my brother. So I was like a C cadet, and I was in like JRTC when he was already enlisted, and I remember going to his graduation and being like, yeah, like this is what I want to do. Like this is the environment that I thrive in. Because I had like naturally strong leadership skills, and which some people would refer to as like being a bossy, but I was, and I embraced that, and it was an environment where like that became an asset instead of a shortcoming. And so basically after high school, I got an Air Force scholarship to go to college. So the Air Force sent me to Norwich University, which is a military college in Vermont. And I loved it there. I loved every second of it. Like my whole freshman year was basically like the basic training aspect. Your whole first year, your whole rookie year, like plebe year at the Naval Academy is it's like walking in the gutters. You know, you can't, you have to keep your eyes squared forward. You have to greet and recognize all officers and upperclassmen, but like you can't do it while looking at them. So there's this whole, yeah, you have to wear a rook hat. Like but it was awesome because the camaraderie and the friendship was the thing that stood out the most. Like even though we were getting hazed, we were like, ooh. Even though, you know, it was fun for us because it was like you go on these spirit missions. What are we doing tonight? Well, we're leaving our racks in the middle of the night. We're going to go spray paint a huge A for Alpha Company on the rock of this quarry.
I'm assuming that enforces the group dynamic, correct? I mean,
yeah.
That enforces the strength. And that's what even all first responders, I believe some of them are used to that strength because they're dependent on each other. And in this case here, being part of the military, right off the bat, they teach that we need each other, that we're not doing this alone.
Right.
When you entered into service, did you have the support from your family?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the only person in my family that had been a veteran was my Uncle Bob. And he had been in the Army for 20 some odd years, you know? So my brother and I were kind of like the first immediate generation that decided to enter into service. And it was a little bit after, let's see, I went to Norwich University in 2008. So, you know, 9/11 had happened 7 years prior, but I remember being a sophomore and in my high school biology class, seeing it happen and being like this is absolutely something I want to do. Like I felt some kind of way, you know, as an American, as a patriot.
And obviously, as you went through the academy or whatever, it probably reinforced your firm belief that this is something you wanted to do, correct?
Absolutely.
So you build the bond as you go through, correct? You build an independence on each other, which is what we need, obviously, especially as first responders. You have independence. Now, as you enter the military and you start seeing some type of, you know, you start seeing action. How does your perspective of what you're doing now change?
I remember the first time that I went to a memorial service, and I skipped right to that because that kind of did shift my perspective on things. Basically, the idea that we're sold, you know, essentially of we're going to do this fighting because it is the right thing to do and we are liberating people and this, that, and the other, seemed a lot less true when your friends start coming home in boxes. I realized that it wasn't about whatever bigger picture we were supposed to be serving. It became about the people around you that you built those bonds with. It became about like the fact that I knew that the people next to me had my back and that I had theirs. And it's funny because I remember the biggest thing that was shocking about my transition that I hadn't even like mentally prepared myself for was that there's nothing like that in the civilian world that I've found. I mean, I found something close in the music community I'm a part of here, but there's nothing quite like hating somebody, but knowing that they would like risk their life for you. That was a different kind of camaraderie and a different kind of bond that when you're thrust into the civilian world, regardless of whether you go through transition or not, and I did, it takes getting used to. And obviously because I went through drug and alcohol treatment, I didn't do so well with the adjustment portion of that. But I'm doing much better now.
But you have that unspeakable bond, like you just mentioned, and the public, being a first responder myself, you find that they're far removed and they're quick to cast judgment, really not knowing the specifics of it all. And then you have someone who's been in the field, and it's very hard for you to try to tell your story. Did you find that to be a problem when you went home and you wanted to tell your story, that it was hard for you to relate to someone and be able to get that story out?
Yeah, it was funny because I wasn't sure what my story was at that point. I was still confused. I had this love-hate relationship with the military because I had gotten out on a med board, so I didn't want to get out. But my knees are shot. My orthopedic surgeon specifically said, like, well, your MRIs came back and your knees are dog meat. So dog meat was the phrase he used. So that was pretty clear.
So you're done.
Pretty clear indication you're going to a med board. And so I had this love-hate relationship. Like I had a resentment because I didn't want to get out, but I also had been using and drinking, and my addiction was starting to take hold of me while I was in the military. So I knew that if I stayed in that environment, there was part of me that knew if I stayed, I was going to get worse. And then there was another part of me that never wanted to be a civilian again.
So, just going back, when did you develop the addiction?
College, for sure, because my father passed away when I was a sophomore in college, and I just kind of went off the rails. It was a military environment, so drinking was kind of part of the culture, and we would go up to Canada and get just wasted, and even on campus, which, I don't think I can get in trouble now from it was a dry campus, but we would find ways around it. And so I would drink until I blacked out, and on the summers I started using drugs. Eventually I got caught by the Air Force detachment. They, now years later, I can admit that I was doing what they thought I was doing. But at the time I denied it 100%. So I lost my commission over that, which is why I ended up enlisting in the Army. I lost my commission over an investigation into drug use. So they disenrolled me, and I had blown out my knee playing rugby too, so I was also abusing my pain pills. Like, it was this whole thing with these underlying issues that I never addressed that I kept carrying with me everywhere I went, thinking the next thing I do is going to be the thing that keeps me in line.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was a Kaplan test prep teacher, and I thought that was going to keep me in line. Didn't keep me in line. I got clean long enough to enlist and go into the Army, and then I had a knee surgery when I was in AIT, and I was off to the races then. And then I got clean again when I went to my duty station, and I stayed that way for a while. And it was always abusing pain pills or drinking. And
now, did you know you had an addiction? I know that you had, obviously, for obvious reasons, you're going to go through that state of denial. And also, when you're being investigated, obviously, maybe, I don't know if you're questioning the fact that you really are addicted, or you knew you were addicted and you were trying to cover it up. Did you know at the time that you were addicted to...
I didn't want to admit it. So there's a very much a part of me that had been bolstered, like this ego, this external facade I had to put out to people that was very much a part of sort of what you have to do in the military or in a military environment, paramilitary environment, first responders, anything like that, law enforcement. You have to show that you're okay because people around you need you to be okay, people that are relying on you. So that became something I internalized, and even though there was a part of my brain that knew that this ran in my family and that I had a drinking problem, I didn't want to admit it because it meant letting myself down, letting the people around me down. It meant admitting there was something wrong with me. I didn't know at the time that I couldn't stop. I thought I could stop.
So that was your first resistance?
Yes.
Admitting to yourself that you had a problem?
Yes.
And then once you're able to admit to yourself you have a problem, then it's admitting to yourself that you need help?
Right.
Okay, so...
And therein lies the rub.
Okay, so...
So, okay, at a certain point it became undeniable that I had a problem, but like, the number one priority was that no one found out. No one would find out.
So you're going to try to heal yourself.
Right.
And how dangerous can that be for an addict?
It'll kill you. It'll just, if it doesn't kill you, it'll kill somebody else. You'll drive the wrong way down the highway, or you'll be doing maintenance on a vehicle messed up, and you won't do something right, and then that vehicle gets shipped off to a unit that's getting deployed, and now what?
Okay, so now you're coming off as a very orderly person, correct? I mean, that's sort of the reason why you said you had that bossy attitude and you kind of joined the military because it fit into that personality, correct?
Right.
So now you start losing control of yourself, who you are. So when did you realize, okay, you know what? I need help. I need to go and seek help. I can't do this.
I didn't realize that until, so I didn't realize that until I got out of the Army. And I was a teacher at a local high school for 9th and 10th grade biology. And I was letting those kids down. So that part still really bothers me. I love that job and I loved those kids. And I was showing up late. I was, I just wasn't present the way that I could have been or should have been if I had gotten help ahead of time. And the reason that bothers me so much is like I had cultivated this idea of being okay no matter what. That no matter what, there were people that were going through worse things than me. There were people that had been through worse things than me. There were people that had a reason to be as messed up as I was. There were people that had a reason to use drugs and alcohol to numb themselves the way that I was. And, here I was doing it with an awesome job and a loving family and everything going for me. And I couldn't stop.
I noticed you mentioned that people had reasoning for drinking, and I guess you found yourself not having those reasons. How does that affect the addiction? Because now you don't know how to address it.
Right. So, I mean, it was this idea that I still had that I had to have a reason for being an addict or an alcoholic. I had to have something need to have happened that was bad that made me this way. And that is, I've come to find out, like, not at all the case. Granted, I lost my stepfather, I lost my father, I watched my uncle die a slow death on a hospice bed in our living room. Like, I've seen, I've gone through and plus my military experience, some things that sucked, for lack of a better word, but I still didn't think that was like enough of a reason for me to be this messed up. And I come to find out through treatment and through sort of like addressing the reasons or the motivations behind people becoming an addict. Sometimes it doesn't need to be anything. I've met people who had their stories that they had a perfectly awesome life and they just felt this hole or this emptiness inside that they needed to fill, and they filled it with drugs and alcohol. And I feel like everybody, to a certain extent, has that hole inside of them, but some people find a way to fill it that involves God, that involves community, that involves their job, that involves hobbies. Like, some people find a healthy way, and some people, like me, people with gambling addiction, sex addiction, whatever your issue is, find a way to fill it that is not conducive to a good life.
Now, did you find that there were people that were supportive of your addiction, people that enabled it, like especially when you were in college and you're partying?
Oh yeah, well, but then nobody looks at it that way at that point, right? So the whole military environment very much supports this culture of drinking. There's drinking at company-sponsored events and whatnot, but it's everybody assumes that you can handle yourself. Very rarely does it come to light that somebody has a problem until they get a DUI, and then you're slammed for getting a DUI there's not a very good culture of recognizing and treating addiction problems in the military, but I think that is also a result of just kind of the mission, like needing to, look, you have a problem, sorry, but you need to get out because we have a mission to do. And that I understand.
Right, now as we move forward, you realize that you have a concern, it's out of your control, so now you go to seek treatment. How bad, like how low were you when you realized that I can't do this on my own?
I was pretty close to dying. I was in pretty bad shape. I was also suffering with other issues. My weight was, I probably weighed like 60 pounds less than I do now. I was like skin and bones. I was physically in pretty bad shape, and I was probably, I don't know, a couple months away from not being here anymore. And the state that I was in, I couldn't control my addiction at this point. It had gotten completely out of my hands. And I thought that I could hide it from people. I thought that nobody knew. And then when they did know, I didn't care anymore. I was past the point of caring. I just cared about getting the next one. Because I couldn't feel all the guilt that now had built up around the issue. I didn't want to feel the fact that I never addressed my father's death. I didn't want to feel, my issues of inadequacy and my insecurities. All the things that normal people feel and deal with were this insurmountable mountain to me, and I just didn't know where to begin.
Well, let me ask you a question. So in order to address anyone's addiction and to move forward, are you telling me you have to deal with the shadows of your past?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Shadows of the Past is actually one of my favorite songs. Yes, so you can't really expect treatment to work unless you're willing to get honest. And in getting honest, everybody has skeletons in their closet. Everybody has done things that they didn't want to do or don't think that they can live with or think that nobody will accept or nobody will understand. Come to find out that's not the case. Everything that I have gone through or seen or experienced, there has been somebody else along the way in my treatment and in my sober community that has experienced the same thing and can relate to me.
Okay, so now, where did you go to seek treatment?
So first, I went to a couple different places. First, I went to a treatment facility that wouldn't treat me because of my eating disorder, and so that was a whole nother thing. So they sent me, I was not a one-trick pony. And so they sent me to an eating disorder facility, and then I got treatment there, and then I still wasn't ready to stay clean. So I relapsed, and then I went to an outpatient, and then I relapsed, and I finally had a gun in my lap, and I was either going to use again, or I was going to just end it. And I called the Veteran Suicide Hotline instead. What
was their direction?
So get away from the firearm was the first direction that I was given, and get to the West Palm VA, and I did, and I got checked into the psych ward there. I got detoxed, and that sucked. And then I started the very long journey of putting myself back together into the woman that I was supposed to be. They told me they had a facility that had a music program, Transformations Treatment Center. And I was like, okay, well then that's where I'm going, because I play a little guitar.
Okay, so you mentioned that you had relapsed.
Right, okay.
So now, being that this is your second or third attempt, and now you're at treatment, what made your approach different this time? What did you have to admit about yourself that needed to be changed immediately?
I had to get honest. I had to get vulnerable. And I had to be willing to look at myself without any of the defense mechanisms that I had spent so long building, because I thought I needed to protect myself. I thought I needed to protect myself from the criticisms that came with being a woman. I thought I needed to be as unaffected, unemotional, and tough and masculine as possible, so that everything associated with my femininity and with you know, my opinions wouldn't tarnish the way that I wanted other people to see me, which was as a strong individual who could handle anything. When the truth was, like, I was falling apart. And while on the outside, sometimes I made it look pretty good, sometimes, you know, I was a mess. So I had to admit that I couldn't do it alone, that I needed help, and that there were things about me that had to change.
Okay, so as you start moving forward, you start progressing in a positive direction, how were you able to substitute the addiction? What is it that you found interesting?
So there's a music program at Transformations. There are a couple individuals here, well, a lot of individuals here that have become like staples in my recovery. There's an alumni coordinator named Chris, who's one of my best friends. Helena, another alumni individual here that runs the alumni program, is like a huge part of coordinating all of this amazing stuff that happens. And Serge, Brian, and Terry are the people that run the music program. And I probably got honest with them before I got honest with anybody else, because they knew me and they kind of saw me. And even when I lied to their face, they were like, yeah, sure. Let me know like when you're ready to not be full of shit. And it was that sort of like upfront, honest, but loving approach that got me to feel safe enough to start opening up. And I wrote my first song here. I, you know, as far as writing lyrics and music to it, I recorded my first song here. I met my bandmate here. And as I transitioned out of treatment into the real world and went back to school and everything, my band actually kind of like became one of the tools I use in recovery as far as writing music, sharing it with people. We play shows, you know what I mean? Like we play like several shows a month, and getting paid to do your hobby is like one of the most amazing things. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that that would happen to me. So I concentrate on school, which thanks to my GI Bill, I'm going for my master's program. And
Let me ask, master's in what?
Microbiology and biochem.
Really?
Yeah.
May want to say that again. What is that again?
Microbiology and biochemistry. Yeah. So I mean, I'm very lucky. The Air Force paid for my biology degree, and you know, my GI Bill is paying for my master's along the same route. So I have this passion for science, and then I have this love for music, and also my recovery community, going to meetings, helping other women in my community, doing step work, these things that are showing me that I'm not a bad person. I'm just a person who did bad things.
Now, just being a little technical, correct? And now that you're getting ready to get a master's in microbiology,
Yeah.
how does music heal you biologically?
Well, I've heard a lot of stuff about different frequencies being able to influence the body, and obviously, as like a staunch scientist, I don't know so much about that. I know cats purr at a frequency that actually helps them heal and induces cartilage and tissue growth. But anyway.
But I'm sure, like even like
mentally,
joke,
yeah.
mentally, you're able to write what you feel, put it in music, and express your pain.
Right. So it's as far as healing goes, I've written songs from my mom's point of view. I've written songs about friends that have overdosed and died. I've written songs about, you know, how awesome friendship is. And in recovery, I have real friends again. And it almost feels like people have my back the way that they did in the service. So the music community here and writing music and sharing it with people allows me to realize I have a purpose outside of just putting a uniform on. And that if I allow myself to put my guard down and share honestly with people, I can become the woman I'm supposed to be. And I can share myself with other people in a way that will allow them to become the people they're supposed to be.
And what's very important is that you're able to relate to their issues and express out of a success story, if you will, that if I can do it, you can do it. So you're leading by example, which I think is definitely amazing. You're someone that kind of rose through it all. Like what is the flower that blooms in adversity, if you will? You know what I mean? You are that flower that bloomed, and everything else is telling you not to bloom. You found a way to bloom. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure was mine. Again, Tamara Evans, thank you for helping me put a little highlight on this great first responder treatment program that they have here at Transformations Treatment in Delray, Florida.
They're amazing.
Yes, and Hope to talk to you again.
Thank you.